What's going on, everybody? I'm Grimnot,
Hey, I'm Boss MCG, otherwise known as Tom Ross.
and today we're going to do a tier list for the standard heroes. I think this is a great time to do this coming off of the back of your major win. For anybody that missed it this weekend, we had the second major of the year where our guild put two people into the finals, which I thought was really good, with Boss here ultimately taking it down. You want to talk a little bit about your weekend?
Yeah, it was actually a big weekend. It marked the 1 month kind of anniversary of Generation 5 coming out, Elemental Warfare. And there were two big tournaments. There was an open there, which is for $500 total. Then there was a major, which happens every 2 or 3 months. And that's for $2,500. But I ended up taking it down along with my team beatdown teammate Rain. And I was playing Seraph that time, which I will say is the
Yes.
first S tier hero. So go ahead and
So,
drag
yep,
that one on up.
we're going to transition right over into the tier list and we'll start with Seraph. So, for anybody that's not aware, Seraph has a passive ability that says whenever you draw an additional two cards, skip your draw at the start of each of your turns, and it has an active to summon a business for 4 mana.
Yeah, kind of diving right into it here. So there's a lot going on in the first line of text. We draw a card, draw an additional two. That means things like whenever you evolve off an egg or evolve off anything else, evolving, you draw a card. This time you draw 3 cards. If you steal anything, you draw a card off somebody else's deck. You get to steal 3 instead. And it works with a couple few other things like Windseeker. If there's not an evolution in your deck, you just draw a card. So you draw 3. The secret thing is at the start of the game, you draw 5 cards, and that triggers for some reason, and you draw 7, which is cool. And then it has the active ability of summon a business, a 2 mana 2/2 with greed. You can press the button and get it for 4 mana. Nice little fail safe attached to it. Already good card. It's just normal and light. It didn't have the deepest like rare of effect things, so you have to play like Miri and Runestone. But the good thing is you're doing a lot of stealing from your opponent's deck. So whatever they're doing, the better their deck is, the better your deck ends up being because you just steal all their good cards.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna kind of just keep diving right into it. I'm gonna throw out what I played this weekend at the major, which was Boris. Where do you think that one's gonna lie?
I think it's solidly in B. It can be one of the strongest decks there is as a button of making a Boris or a Morris or a Doris for 4 mana. But then it says as its passive, all of your family members, your Boris, Morris, and Dorises, I'll get +3/+3, which is pretty good. You can only play one Boris in your deck. All of these heroes, you can only play one of the named hero in your deck at the time to get the thing. But it has a super cool ability if you have the mom and dad and play anywhere. It could be on the opponent's side too. Then it gets infinite strike and rush and uh, rock solid, so it doesn't take any damage when attacking. So you sweep your whole board. The problem is it's kind of bad to all the other control decks,
Yeah,
which we'll get into. Seraph being one of them.
loses very hard to the other control list. So we're gonna kind of just go down the list here. What about Aethernar? So we've got Aethernar up next.
Yeah, it's just a normal hero. Normal is in the element. 5 mana summon 2 Fayushas is 0/1 eggs. Pretty weak compared to the other options. I'm just going to slam it in F tier. F tier, for the record, may mean like underdeveloped heroes because they're still working on them. So a lot of them are underpowered. So I won't like brush these off forever, but right now they're just not really something you choose because there's just better options.
Absolutely. Well, coming up next, we've got Ankia the White, whose passive is all friendly champions with Light of Aldrich at +2/+0, and it has an active to summon a Chromatia, which also has Light of Aldrich for 5 mana.
Yeah, this is average. C tier is gonna be average, so you can expect like a good 50-50 win rate or whatever. This has some good matchups. I mean, a lot of Aldrich when it dies, it doesn't die and it's come back with full toughness instead. That's pretty good. And I'll see the active as a 5 mana summon Chromatia, but I think that's really like a 4 mana card after you tie in the passive ability too. The +2/+0 kind of almost gives all of your other Light of Aldrich cards in your deck like a half mana more effect. So that's good. This can happen to all your Light of Aldrich cards. But when I look at this, some information, that's kind of like a 4 mana card for a 7/5 with Light of Aldrich. I think it's pretty decent. I think it may be the best light hero. Light's kind of weak, but I mean, Sarah's better, but it's not even really a light hero. It's more like a steal your stuff, all colors kind of hero.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, coming up next, speaking of Light of Aldrich, we're just going to go right into Aldrich, who has a passive that says if you have two or more light champions on the field, your Aldrich Soy Hammer is indestructible. So damage that would normally destroy it does not. And it has an active to summon the new equip card, Soy Hammer's Horn, for 5 mana.
Yeah, I think sadly I'm gonna have to put this in F tier. You're playing like a deck that wants to benefit off Light of Aldrich and Aldrich itself, but you really want two Aldrichs in your deck, and you only can play one. And the Soul Hammer's Horn normally costs 3, but I don't even think that's that good. At 5 mana, I just kind of don't want it. I don't really think it has a place. Maybe just you have to wait on it. Maybe it'll get buffed later on, but I think its biggest downside is you only play one Aldrich in your deck.
Well, with that, let's talk about some of the decks that have been seeing a lot of play recently. Let's move into Madeline. Madeline, water normal, and has a passive that makes all of your tsunamis deal an extra damage to all affected champions. And for 5 mana, you can summon a steady with its active ability.
Yeah, this is another S tier hero right here. You can play all the normal cards you want, all the water cards, and yeah, summoning a steady for 5 mana. That's basically a 4 mana card once you uh, talk about the passive too. So it's kind of doing the same thing as Anki does, but you just have mainly a deeper card pool because water's better than light. And I think it's just slightly stronger too. I think the additional 1 damage, 4 damage to the main target was your tsunami, than 2 across all the other champions. It's just really strong. It doesn't have many flaws in it. Has AOE stuff. It can mow down things with Blizzard. Um, good like evolution lines, steady on up, frosty on up. Some eggs if you want to play them. You can do the Fayusha and the Urgot thing, but most people just play white and just play like Madeline and a few other things, Cryogon and Juju or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of a total package, and it's seen a lot of play.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it loses to some of the other slower decks, but absolutely just slams most of the aggressive lists. And speaking of aggressive lists here, we're going to move into Inferno, the Ashen Lord, which is fire only, and it has a passive of you have 1 wildfire.
Yeah, I'll just put this in. I put it in B tier. It's very strong. It's kind of like we'll get into other just mono fire champions, but yeah, it just happens every turn with every card you play. It happens when a card comes off like an egg as well. So yeah, it's something you can count on. You can count on to like ensure you have the good early game because they can't get like the egg advantage on you. They can't really come out of the gates faster than you, and you can combine it with like other wildfire effects as well to kind of get them stacking up and rolling. So a good Inferno list will have like a cheap curve, and it's really like the check on like taking out the trash. Like if you're doing a little bit of too much slow playing, too much goofing around, spinning your wheels, and a deck like Inferno can always come up and show you what's up.
All right, we'll take another look here at another deck that has seen a lot of play, which is Venomiscus. So this is going to be quite an interesting one. I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in A tier. It's a normal nature card which has 5 mana. Summon Explorer, which is a 4/5 with steel. So this is kind of the ultimate end game kind of hero because the nature plays things like equality, where you gain 12 life. If you have less life, it has the board sweepers like the earthquake cards, like the fungal spores. So it's controlling the board, and then it's eventually just kind of runs the opponent out of cards with the steel just tacked onto its active ability. It can get beat by a few things, like Seraph, for example. It doesn't have to draw cards, so they kind of get stuck not being able to force the opponent to fatigue. But that's really the only big predator against Venomiscus. It can be get beat by the slower, or not the slower, the faster decks, say like the fire decks. So it's not just beating everything. You have to go like pretty extremely uh, better steel heavy than them or faster than them. But it's pretty good. You get to use the opposing cards out of their deck too. So you have some non-nature, non-normal cards that you get access to. So that's always cool.
Well, what about Thallus the Void Speaker? So it's a normal dark with a passive that says all of your fangs have Otherworldly in addition to any of their other abilities, and you get an active for 3 mana to summon one fangs.
Yeah, this is an A tier card. The cool thing is you can. It only costs 3 mana for the active ability, so you can use it 3 times in a turn when it's on turn 9 and above. Then you get access to a ton of eggs. You get access to 6 for 1 mana eggs and 2 violets. So you're really deep on it. And the heroes that get access to eggs mean that you can play it off the eggs. So like Madeline, for example, may just be the worst card in the Madeline deck, but Thallus, you have more eggs, so it's going to come out a bit faster. And I think it's a little bit better rate anyway, too. They backed it up with a bunch of Otherworldly and a bunch of Elemental Guards. So you're playing basically just a mono dark death deck. That's just some of the best normal cards like the Bofas and the Munes. It's been performing well, top aided in the major, and I think they found it a good list though, so I think it's gonna be top of the list for a while.
Yeah, I think we'll see that one for a little while, but speaking of Bofa, let's talk about the champion Bofa here. So normal cards only with an active to summon one Fuku for 5 mana.
Yeah, Fuku's probably the best card in the game, pound for pound. That's why it's banned. But that said, I'll put this in D tier. The normal only restriction is kind of bad, and the other normal only heroes kind of had better than making a 5 mana 1 mana card. So, but it is Fuku is strong though, so that's the only reason it's in D.
Yeah, I think otherwise it probably makes a solid splash down in the F tier there. So we'll get into our first elemental hero. Let's talk about, I believe this is Dark Air. I want to go find the name. This is Shadriel the Twilight Storm. This is the normal Dark Air hero.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and put this in B. There's several ways you can build this. You can build it with a bunch of eggs, like the darks and the perps, and also air has 4 eggs too. So you can try to do this like Cyclonus thing early, try to do the Blightooth thing early, and you can also play normal too. You can play the Urgot kind of early thing. You can play a deck like that, where it's just like good cards, like some Hex, some Windseeker, some this, that, and the other. Or you can play like a combo version, where you play like Rune Skimmy and Belt of Snakes, or otherwise life steal creatures, and try to like pop off. You can do this with Rush too, so you can come up with your Ocho and then play a Belt of Snakes on it, and then play Rune Skimmy, which gives Infinite Strike and Life Steal. So we're looking at wiping their whole board off in one fell swoop. So it's kind of cool that you can do this, that, and the other. Plus, you also on all these dual element heroes, you get the +2 damage to the various rock paper scissors of their elements. So in this case, it'll do dark will do more damage to light, and the air will do more damage to I think it's water.
Uh,
So
yes, that's correct. 2 extra damage to water.
yeah, so this could be a kind of a meta pick against, say, the Madelines or the Gabenors or the Jujus of the world, if that's part of the meta. But there's a lot of ways to build it, and yeah, that's why I put it in B. I think it's above average.
Well, we'll keep right along in line with the dual element cards. Let's talk about Varela the Corrupted Bloom. This is the Dark Nature.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this in B too. There's a lot of ways to build it. It's kind of like a very just solid deck with the dark cards that can raise dead or hex things, and the nature that can sweep things or gain new life. It's just always a pretty solid deck to default on. So I think it's always gonna be above average.
And I think for the next little bit, we're going to keep in line with these dual element cards. Let's talk about Dark Water. This is try to find this name real quick. This is Blackfin Shadow of the Deep.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit worse. You do have the C tier. You do have the tsunami, and you do have like the hexing and stuff. But I think it's just a touch worse than the Dark Nature. I think Dark Nature is just a little bit deeper in what it's trying to do. While if you want to be like tsunamiing things, you probably want to play something more water focused.
Right. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. What about Azrakal Infernal Warden, the Dark Fire?
Okay, I think this one's quite good. I'm actually gonna put it in A tier for now. because of how easy to play it is and how accessible it is, and because there's some number of good nature decks that are high up right now. There's a good bit of an Hibiscus and there's some Boris running around, and there's the dark natures. But the +2 fire damage against nature comes up quite a lot. You playing things like Wildfire and Inferno, and your deck's just kind of solid too. You get to play pinging damage stuff, and you also get to play like more direct damage stuff. May either be combustions or hexing or cursing or whatever. It's a starter deck right now. I think it's quite good. It's popping up a lot on ladder. It doesn't take much tuning to make it actual like very strong.
And I think this will probably be one of the last dual airs we talk about for the moment, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't. Let's touch on Cinder Sky Maelstrom of Flame. This is the fire air. I believe we've seen a sneak peek of this up in the top 8 of the major, I believe, correct?
Fire air in the major.
I think Talengo was playing fire air aggro. I could be wrong. It might have been an open, but I know we've seen some fire air aggro.
I'm gonna slap it in C tier. Fire air is the supercharge combo. Both air cards and fire cards have the supercharge mechanic. When you have 10 cards in your hand, you play it. It gets double its power and toughness. It also has enough greed cards to make sure your hand stays kind of full. It's a little slow. Top 8 made or an open with this a few weeks back. That's kind of fun. Has some good match, has some bad matchups. People just aren't ready for supercharge. It gets the cards get rushed, so if they don't have like provoke or early game, if they're just kind of just chilling, not doing much, and your supercharge deck should run them down.
Well, let's talk about Shinkoku. I'm not sure how you want to say that, but he is the normal champion, Guardian of the Rice Fields, and his active is to summon one normally and one Sluggernaut.
Yeah, I think it's B. It's but a bit above average. Yeah, it's kind of a all-in-one combo because your normie has Elemental Fury, so it can attack for as many normal cards you have, and your Sluggernaut has Provoke, so it kind of makes him get through a Sluggernaut first. The problem is it is just normal, so you're kind of restricted on cards, and kind of also kind of weak to AOE stuff because you kind of have to go wide. You don't have that many access to a lot of cards. You have to play like one drop 3/3 Plum Dogs or Pluffs or whatever to fill out your deck. But some people just can't beat the Sluggernaut normally every turn. They do have to beat it. It's kind of annoying more than it is good, but it is also good.
All right. Lilith, Princess of Hell. So this is a fire normal hero that has a passive that says self-destruct does not do friendly damage.
Yeah, let's go slap an F tier. First off, it's just really hard to attain this card, but yeah, you need a lot more out of your hero ability than self-destruct not doing any damage. The self-destruct cards just aren't very good rates in the first place. It will need a substantial buff to see this card
Yeah, I'd like
get
to see
good.
something. I'd like to see something with this card, maybe where the passive does self-destruct does double damage to opponents and no friendly damage, and then maybe like a some sort of active ability to actually get a self-destruct card. I think there are only a handful of self-destruct cards that exist anyway, and as you said, most of them are not very good rates. So
It's gonna take some work.
yeah, let's try another fire guy here. Let's talk about Satana. We've got the fallen one here. He has a passive that gives all fire champions armored one.
It was jump right into the good ones. Yeah, this is an S tier card for sure. Very highly played. Armor protects everything: your aggressive creatures, your eggs, your otherworldly cards. It doesn't matter. Keynote that it does affect your opponent's fire champions, but that's not really a big deal. Uh, Having your eggs protected more means you can evolve them more. Having your otherworldly protected more means all your creatures live more, and it has great removal options with combustion and some infernos and wildfires. Just very solid.
I 100% agree. Probably one of the most even matchup decks that you could have in terms of having an even matchup against most decks in the format. Um, all right, let's take a look at Gemini. Gemini Pure Elemental is a normal hero who has a passive that says your genetic split can summon any evolution.
Yeah, this hero is pretty much incomplete. Let's throw it in F tier. You only play one Gemini in your deck. Doesn't have an active of any kind, and passive's not very good. Just it's gonna need a rework.
And I think kind of right along in lines with that, let's talk about Skibidi, Brain Rot Incarnate. It is a normal nature hero who is, as you probably all well know, the Mud Flood guy. He has an active that does Mud Flood X30s, where X is the number of times that you have used this ability for 3 mana.
Yeah, I'm just gonna slap this in F tier as well. It's mostly a trap. You can use it multiple times in a turn, but you really can't do the things that nature wants to be doing. It's kind of want the game going. It does want it to go long, but you can't play like steel cards in your deck. So you can't play like the card Venemiscus or Zinghose or Linkenstein. Common cards that are played in nature. And you don't even know if the card's going to have an effect on the game. They may just never draw attorneys. You may just be pressing a mana button for no effect. So I think it's a big trap. It's one of the most played because it's a common card. It's good to be a common card so they have access to that hero, but really just avoid it.
All right, let's take a look at another nature hero. Let's take a look at Luna Everglow. So we've
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, I think this one's below average. I just stick it in the D tier. It's a life bloom kind of hero. So the passive is your friendly champions with life bloom get +1/+1, and then has life bloom 10 for 6 mana. I think you can do better if you're trying to do nature stuff. You're not really trying to go aggro with nature that much. So your life bloom +1/+1 is like, meh. And then your ability doesn't affect the board, just gains you life. Or make something to a very high toughness. But I just believe the other nature heroes are better than this, so I think it's a little below average.
Let's take another look at another nature hero then. Nature Normal Elder Bark, Keeper of Secrets, who has an active to summon one Fontaria.
Yeah, this is going below average as well. Yeah, you can do better for 5 mana, making a 3/4. Fontaine is a 3 mana card itself and doesn't have any passive. I think nature is strong-ish, and the Fontaine is kind of doing what you want to be doing in nature. It's kind of doing some life bloom or regrowth stuff, but yeah, it's just pretty weak.
All right. And I'm gonna try to hit the major ones that are left in there, and then we can quickly skim over the ones that are left. Let's look at Thor. Thor, Forger of Lightning, passive that says at the start of your turn you're gonna zap a random enemy, champion, or player.
Mm-hmm. It's a C tier card. I think it's stone average. It's getting held back because it's only air. It's not normal as well, and that the 2 damage is very random. If you need to remove their board or their eggs on turn one, it may just not work. It may just not kill the opponent if they have them down to 2, 4, 6 life. So it's kind of strong because the air is pretty strong, but and it kind of does save you a little bit of insurance against their early game. But no, it's just a little bit too random. It feels normal as well as air would probably be B tier, but right now it's in C.
So, um, Soul Rend, Scythe of the Damned, normal dark that has a passive that says your equipped champions have greed in addition to their other abilities, and it has an active to add a random equipped champion to your hand
Yeah, I
for
think it's
3 mana. Sorry.
3. Yeah, yeah, I think it's pretty average. You don't have that many equips you can play. It's like some normal ones like Belt of Speed or Boots of Speed, and like the Belt of Snakes, and the one that gives Bulwark to gives Provoke. But it's not really deep in that. You can have this active that gets a card in your hand, but it is doing exactly that, not putting it into play. So it's pretty slow. It's kind of cool that maybe you can get your Belt of Snakes and get a Rune Scheme or something off the active ability. But I think if we're messing with equips, I just stick with Dark Air and just run them in my deck and try to combo off. But it's strong-ish. Dark and normal strong elements.
Yeah, I definitely think it's got some gimmick potential. Just not so sure that it's super mainstay for the format. But moving on, we've got Nazar, which is Death's Advance. It's another Dark Normal hero who has a passive that says all of your friendly champions with Soul Reaper have +1/+1, and your active is summon one knife for 5 mana.
Yeah, I put this in C. It's pretty medium. There are a couple good efficient Soul Reaper cards. There's like the Vile Grubs and Nazar himself. You get to play all the eggs, and a lot of the great Soul Reaper cards are expensive, like Bendigo and Apocalypse. They don't really need +1/+1. Your ability of making a knife, I think that's a 2 mana card. It's like a 2 mana 3/1 with life or with Soul Reaper. Not that big. It'll be a 4/2. It's okay. I think you want to kind of beat them down and try to do the egg thing for the most part with Nazir.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think the plan. You really want to just try to evolve your eggs early and kind of trade things off the board. I'm not sure that I'm happy with this active ability. A slight change to this active ability probably makes this card a lot better. But like I said, very average. Uh, Next up, we've got Urgok. So everybody's favorite obliterator. So we've got Urgok. He's just normal cards. He has a passive that says your obliterate triggers an additional time. And the active is to destroy the highest attack creature on the field for 6 mana.
Yeah, this one's been popping up a little bit more. I put it in B. I think it's a little above average. Biggest downside again is you can only play one Urgok in your deck. But you do have your two axes and the one Urgok itself. You have three good cards in your decks and got double obliterate, which will completely shift the game in your favor. The active's not bad. It always means that you can like chill out and you always have defense if something insane comes up, like a big Soul Reaper or somebody play Tempest or just whatever. It's always good insurance. And normal is pretty strong on its own. People are winning with it. I hadn't played it in a while myself, but it's doing well on ladder, so it's definitely above average deck.
Absolutely. Keeping right in line with the normal cards, let's talk about Wagyu, the Tasty Samurai. Normal deck again, with the active to summon one Norwalth Castle for 5
Yeah,
mana.
so that's a little bit below average. Yeah, Yard sucks at normal. I think the other normal guys are pretty much better, except for like the Ethan R and the both of himself. Yeah, this was very good at 5 mana to make two Norwalth Castle, but it's quite a difference having it just making one. I think just playing otherworldly cards is probably a better bet than playing Wagyu, just your academies and your fortifications, or if you actually have the card Norwalth Castle. So it's fine. You can get some wins with it, but it ain't what it used to be.
Yeah, definitely the nerf definitely knocked it down a few tiers on this list here for sure. So Incendium is up next, which is a normal fire hero. This is Incendium, the red dragon. The active is summon one Messick, 3 mana, and 10 life is the price to pay for that.
So a lot of people's opinion, this is like one of the worst heroes because you see that 10 life, you're like, man, this is unplayable. So I think a lot of people's initial impression, this is F. I had good success with it. I top 8 and open with it, but I don't know if I want to put it in C or B. Probably just put it in C because it's kind of difficult to play. You have to walk a very thin tightrope, and if you don't really want that rush of danger, maybe you should avoid this. And the only build I found that's actually usable with it is Supercharge. You don't have a ton of Supercharge cards because you don't have access to air, so you have to kind of fill out the deck with some other stuff. It's very fun, but I mean, I wouldn't recommend it unless you really just have the good Supercharge list. And if you're trying to just experiment with it, you're probably gonna be disappointed.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll notate here, I think this has been a reoccurring theme, and I'm kind of advocating for something to be done with this, but I think Incendium as a card is tremendously better than Incendium as a hero. And the fact that I only get to play one Incendium in my Incendium list hinders the deck a bit, right? We kind of touched on it with like Seraph deck or Satana, Thor, Boris. You want to really play two Borises there. The fact that you're limited to only playing one of them, I think, makes the deck just strictly worse. I think there are a lot of other cool plans that you could go with Domestic and Inferno. Considering that Incendium has Inferno 5 himself, there are some different plans that you could go down. But the fact that you only get to play one in the list, I think, really hinders its ability to be played to its fullest, potential.
Right.
And I think you see that with a number of heroes. So moving on, we'll go to Juju Winterspear here. This is the Ice Maul Chieftain. It is a normal water with the active to summon one spooky for 5 mana.
Yeah, this looks like a B tier card. It's worse than Madeline. Making the spooky in general is gonna be worse than the tsunami. But Madeline also has a passive that buffs all your tsunamis. This is better at closing out games, but Madeline's better at getting the game stabilized.
Yeah, keeping you in the
So
game.
I mean, you could play a more aggro build, maybe going face with them, a bunch of icicles or whatever. But It's above average. It's okay.
All right, well, the next two that we're going to do, we're going to look at Glimmer Rock and Glimmer Bat. You can take those in any which way that you would like to go.
All right, just Glimmer Bet.
Oh,
So Glimmer Bat is light and normal. So passive champions with no ability have +2/+2. So nobody's ever played this one, but I'm gonna put it in D tier. I don't think it's completely unplayable.
that's
Uh,
probably
so
probably a good place for it.
so things like Pluff and Pouchy, you put in this deck, and Pudgy and or the evolution of Pudgy, Plumper. There's a bunch of like well-stated things. That's kind of all this hero is doing. It does have a downside is you buff their stuff too, if they have Plumpers or whatever in their deck. And eggs always make a card with no ability, so you want to stick this with your Goulds and your Fayushas and your Silvas if you have them, because they always you could play like Gould and your Aldrich, and maybe you evolve it or maybe you don't. But if it just cracks open, you're going to get a thing with +2/+2. So you want to load this up with eggs, but it does have a downside of whenever you crack their eggs, they get something that's bigger too.
Yeah, absolutely. So Glimmer Rock, the golden normal light, also has an active to summon one Tantric and one Bolo for 6 mana.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick this in D as well. Also, very rare cards. Nobody plays it. 6 mana is not bad for like a 4 mana card and a 1 mana card. That stuff that light is kind of weak, and I mean it's very protective. If you play in things that need to be protected, it's two kind of shields. One is a small earthquake, the other is a provoker. Uh, but I mean, I've never seen it. I'm just kind of making assumptions here, but just on its rate of its active ability, I think it's about D.
All right. I kind of agree with that. It's not completely, completely unplayable, but I definitely agree with your statement
That's
there. So, what about Jesus? We'll keep it right in line with light. We have Jesus the Risen, light normal, active, deals 4 damage to all champions on the field for 5 mana.
Yeah, I think it's pretty average. When you play with this card, you're gonna have a clear plan. You're gonna have like your Light of Aldrich cards. You're gonna have your cards with 5 toughness in it, so it survives it. Then you probably have some late game effects. Maybe it's Aldrich himself. Maybe you're playing like a bunch of Urgoks. Maybe some Huges, or just 8 9 mana cards. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I,
Yeah.
I, I kind of agree with that. And I think the next card is probably just okay. And that's Evelyn Tyr, Goddess of Wind. So it's a normal error, and the passive that you get is that cards you play that cost 5 or more mana have Whirlwind X, where X is the life of the card -1.
Evelyn's quite strong. This is an A tier card. This is one of the premier decks of the format. Um, yeah, their plan is to just kind of get huge amounts of tempo on you, bouncing your stuff naturally, and then bouncing your stuff with the whirlwind passive that's attached to it. It's air and normal, so it has a deep enough card pool. It has enough card advantage with Windseeker. It's very tempo heavy. It can get run over by a deck that has a very low curve because you just recast your cheap cards, especially if they have some kind of inner effect like combustion or whatever. But it's pretty good against the mid range decks. I think it dominates against other mid range decks. They're just playing like strong things like pudgies and plumpers, just without an inner battlefield effect or without you know anything like that. Just raw stats. So it has a huge place in the mid game. I think it can beat just kind of any deck, just based on the tempo.
That's kind of where I felt like that maybe it was like a 50-50 matchup. I do feel that like you said, there's probably a world where if the format is mid-range, then it probably sees a lot of play. I feel like it doesn't do very good against the slower lists, the Seraphs, the Madelyns, the Venomiscus. But I also feel like it doesn't do very good against the Infernos and the Satanas that are out there either. But I do agree with you that it is very strong. The passive ability of being able to get double whirlwinds. I have played games against this deck myself where it is just completely unwinnable. Like they've just drawn a very good curve and they just completely tempo you out of the game, and it feels like no matter what you would have done, there are no answers. And I think that's probably why it gets an A tier nod, because it's going to have some number of games that are just like that.
Yeah, it tempos you out, then it finishes off with thunderbolts and rush creatures, and it has pretty good combos like Screech and or Flutter Bee and the Screech, things like that. I like it evos. It's a very solid deck.
So let's take a look at Vorthos, Ender of, I believe that's Epoches, uh,
Epoch.
Epochs. There you go. It's a dark normal, has a passive to restore 1 health for each friendly champion death, and it has an active that allows you to sacrifice all friendly champions and gain life equivalent to all of the total sacrificed card's life. And it costs no mana to cast it.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this in D. Uh, it may be F, but I don't know. This is kind of the hero that looks like it's unplayable or broken. Like the passive kind of helps you get through a match, but the active's like, whoa, I don't really want to sacrifice my whole board just to gain some life. The game of champions is all about board presence and being either snowbally or just staying a step ahead of your opponent in all steps. So I don't want to be sacrifice my whole board, but also kind of question when is the card that's going to break this come out. But as it stands, yes, it's a little bit below average. I don't think it should have a very good win rate.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at Lilia Necrox, Queen of Pain. This is a dark normal card that I think we were really high on in um, our initial video. But it's got an active that says you can create a copy of any target champion. So you're going to sacrifice a champion and pay 5 mana, and then you just get to create a copy of any other champion. And I feel like, you know, having some sort of sacrifice effect should be able to find a way to make its way into the format, but I just feel like we haven't hit that stage yet.
Well, the ones I've seen are probably a B, but on average, probably a C. Because the best cards to pair with this are probably like the Urgox, which are a little expensive, or is better champions. But you have to have the good champions before you make this card good. You can't just win with a bunch of boogers and bogs and stuff. So I'm gonna put in C just because it's probably a little bit expensive to build the correct build of it. And if you're just kind of messing around trying to make more mechras or something, you're not gonna be that happy. So somewhere in the middle. So I'm gonna put C.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that this card would be served with something that you got a lot of value of something dying, right? I think we've seen things like Timber Fawn, for example, that would be a lot better with a build like this. But the element restrictions make it a little hard to build, I think. Um,
Right.
so I think this is our last named hero. I'm looking in terms of epic named heroes. This is Gabenor the Traveler. He's normal water with the passive that all fire champions get -2, -0, and the active is summon 1 Nordy and 1 Trouble for 6 mana.
Yeah, it's not completely unplayable if your the whole metagame turns to Infernos and Satanas or whatever. So I say it's a D. The active is not good, but is better than not having it. It just summons 2 medium-sized provoke creatures, and that can be okay. Your deck's probably chilling, but really you just have to choose this as an anti-fire measure. Maybe in a 2 deck format or something. You want this on your side.
I also, again, I'll very quickly touch. I find that this is another one of those champions that is hindered by the fact that you can only play one of the named champion in your deck. Because with a list like this that's summoning provokes with an active ability, you're probably playing Rising Waters and trying to make big creatures. And Gabenor is one of the 3 recruit cards that you would actually use inside of your list, and now you're kind of being cut down one of those as well.
Mm-hmm.
So of the champions that we have left, are there any that should be specifically talked about? I want to make sure that I'm.
Not really. I think the last named champion is Kessie.
Yes, Kessie, that is correct. Let's, well, if I can find her up
She's
here.
well.
There we are. Kessie, Daughter of the Winds, Air Normal, has an active, whirlwinds all cards under 5 HP back to their opponent's hands, including your cards, and it costs 5 mana.
Yeah, a little weirdly worded. It's a D tier card. I'm sure it has a place. I don't think anybody's really tried it, but mostly because there's better normal air heroes available. But I mean, there's a deck can be found that bounces all their stuff. I think it's a little bit weaker than say something like Jesus. Mm. Actually, it's probably F. I think it's just F until it finds a passive along with the normal air. It doesn't get to like the +2 from the air, so it's looking kind of weak.
Yeah, I kind of agree with this notion. And then I guess just really quickly, we'll flip through these. So we've got Emberwood the Blazing Sentinel. It's the Fire Nature list.
Yeah, a lot of these just haven't found homes, or maybe they're just kind of awkward color pairs. So most of them are going to be D or C tier. This one I'm gonna put in D. Probably most of them are going in D actually. It's hard to just slam all these in F because the +2 versus various elements can be decent.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think we've seen where that can be even game breaking in some cases, where a certain deck just absolutely can't function because of the passive that exists. Um,
yeah, most of these are gonna get slammed into D. What we got this Scaldor?
yes. Well, if I can find it. There it is. Bam. Yeah, Scaldor, Flame of the Seas. So this is your fire water guy, probably also going into D, I would assume.
Yeah, a lot of these are just below average. You can play all your best cards of the dual elements in them, but they don't
Um,
really function well with each other, or at least I haven't seen it.
yeah, I 100% agree with kind of the take there. And then we've got Valeria, the Dawnbringer, which is light air. I would almost be contingent to put that one into F tier. But again, the passive probably just sticks it into D.
No, you can put it in F. The ones that have light and dark in their passive don't really come up that much. Like for
Yeah,
example, the next guy that only is +2 against light and dark because it's light and dark itself.
yeah, that
Uh,
this one is
I think it's straight F.
yeah, almost completely unplayable. Probably needs an adjustment there. So now we've got the Firelight one, which is Lucian, the
Yeah,
Radiant.
that looks like
Also,
a D to me.
oh, all right, we'll stick her right into the D there. We've got
I mean,
uh,
light sucks, but fire is good against the nature stuff. So
that is true,
fire is just like
absolutely.
one of the strongest elements.
Elowen, Guardian of Life. So we have light nature here.
I think this is a fine control deck. I think it uses the best of light and nature. Like you can play a control deck with Huges, which is a big greed card from light, and uh, some like earthquakes and some time warps with Team Wapu. It's close to C, but I'm gonna put it in D. I think it's very close.
All right, Poseidus, Lord of Atlantia. This is our light water guy.
Yeah, water's good, light's not. I think it's just a D.
All right, right into the D, and then looks like we're gonna have a few nature guys here. So we have Arbor, the Wild Spirit, which is nature air.
It's a good combo for a supercharged deck and a control deck, so it's a C.
So we've got our first C tier there, and then it looks like we have water nature here in the form of Crocus, the Swamp Herald.
Yeah, I think there's like you do in nature and water. I think it's a C as well.
And then our last two here, we've got Lyra, Breeze of the Ocean, which is air water.
I have not really seen this played much, but I think it's fine. I always confuse this with Cassie. I'd put it in D.
Right into the D. And then last but not least, we have the elemental hero, which is named Elementius. All is one. Obviously, it is a named hero. You can use any element cards. The passive is that you may use any element cards in your deck, but you can no longer cast any evolutions, and you start with 40 HP, which is 20 less than you're starting.
Yeah, it's pretty much only useful when testing new cards or playing against the single player. So it's an F. Doesn't have anything going for it. You should be able to build something better after like a day of playing.
Yeah, absolutely 100% agree with you there. I guess now the question is there anything looking back at our tier list that you would like to change? So now we kind of get to the overall view of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the dual nature heroes are low, and that's kind of where they should be. You should try to acquire some rare or mythic kind of heroes and try to build your deck around it. I think the C tier looks about right, and the decks that have been performing really well are above it, and the cards that we really don't see much play of are below it. And the decks I really recommend you not playing in the F tier. I think you should do that until they do another balanced patch because a lot of these heroes look a little bit incomplete. So we just gotta wait till they have enough time to run through the numbers and give little buffs here and there to the unplayed heroes.
Right, yeah. As we get into this 2 week cycle, I think we'll be just fine. We'll, 2 week, month cycle, whatever it is, when they're going to make balance patches and changes, whatever they end up landing on, I think we will start to see some micro adjustments to a hero here or a hero there. I think that'll be good moving forward. But really, if you're going to show up to the Weekend Open or you're going to go and try to do your next tournament, you're probably looking at B tier decks or better, is what you want to ultimately achieve to build. Obviously, if your budget is a little lower, you can probably get away with some of the decks in the C tier, the dual element decks that are in there. But really, you want to shoot for that B tier and up. And, I think the A and the S tier are really rock, paper, scissorsy. We've talked about this a couple times in the video, but I do think that, at any given day, depending on the meta, maybe Thallus is an S tier deck that tournament, right? This isn't necessarily set in stone. This is just kind of based on overall. But I do think we've hit a world where it's starting to become more about metagaming, right? I made a pretty, I won't call it an error, but it was a pretty bad judgment call, I think, for the weekend. I chose to play Boris, which, in going into the weekend, I knew that Boris auto lost to Seraph and Venomiscus. I didn't expect to see very many people on Venomiscus, if anybody at all. And I expected to see a couple of Seraphs, but not enough that would really affect everything. And then we show up and you see that there's an entire guild playing Venomiscus, and there's, more Seraphs than I thought. And I get round 1 Venomiscus, round 2 Seraph, and I lose both matches because they're practically 0% win rates. But there's also a world where, I show up to a tournament on the weekend and there's not a bunch of Venomiscus and Seraphs, and my deck is really good. Maybe it overperforms the B category and moves into the A category or the S category for that weekend just based on the number of matchups that are there. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
it was kind of unlucky. The S tier cards or S tier heroes have fewer flaws. I think you're be happy to play against most things with them. As new players, I would look into either Dark Fire or Dark Water or Dark Nature or Dark Air, basically dark stuff. If you just want to play a normal hero with a lot of room to improve on, I would start with like Dark Fire since it's a starter deck. That'd be my advice until you get some other guys.
Absolutely. Well, with that, that concludes our tier list. I'm going to flip us back over and show our beautiful faces one more time here. There we are. So, as we get a little closer here to the end of the video, I just want to make sure that everybody knows my Twitter is posted down below. Tom's Twitter is posted underneath him at boss_MTG. Make sure you guys are going out and checking us out on Twitter, following our pages. Get out and follow the Champions page. I would like for you guys to tell us what you think of our tier list inside the comments, right? I know really this is mostly Boss's tier list for the most part, but I agree with pretty much everything that was here. We kind of pre-talked about it, about where we wanted the heroes to be and things of that nature. But I value Boss's opinion a lot. I think you guys will as well. He did just pick up a huge win in the major. Congratulations again on that. I thought you performed really well. Great weekend, and I hope that we get to see you do it again. I assume you're going to be rocking and rolling in these weekend opens.
Yeah, I'll try my best. And there'll be another major in a few months, and there's like a Worlds coming up too. But every weekend has a $500 tournament, which is lucrative enough to play.
And they're completely free. So for anybody that doesn't know, the weekend tournaments and the weekday tournaments, every day there is a free tournament. Weekday tournaments are moving to gym payouts, and the weekend tournaments have cash prize that is readily available. And it is no cost to you to join these weekend tournaments. There's no cost to the major, right? The major is an invite-only tournament. Only 64 players get to go. But the weekend opens are a great time for you to go out and actually experience a competitive tournament scene where you bring a deck and you play against other people in a Swiss format, and it cuts to a top 8. So if you haven't checked one of those out, you really should go do that. But yeah, with that, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything to wrap us up with?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Well, with that, I've been Grimnod, and that's been Boss MTG, and this has been our tier list. We appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Yep, thank you.